Hi, my name is Matt, and I have a question for you. Have you ever wondered how this handsome devil wins every single game of rock, paper, scissors that he plays in Mob Psycho? Well, that's not something I can teach you because that's not a real strategy. Today, we're going to be talking about the fact that rock, paper, scissors is a lot more strategic than you might think. As a matter of fact, I want to demonstrate the fact that it's strategic right now. So, I'm gonna recount the rules for you. You usually play this game between two people, like you and I, and in each round, both players get to pick one of three actions: rock, paper, or scissors. The two players conceal what decision they're going to make from one another until it's time to shoot, after which they reveal their hands. Once the hands are revealed, if the hands are the same, it's a draw. If they are different, one of them wins. So, paper covers rock, scissors cut paper, and rock smashes scissors. Pick an action, and when I say shoot, show me your hand. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Did I win? Okay, considering this video is probably gonna get a few dozen views, I probably didn't win every single game that I just played. But if I did win my individual game with you, I want to tell you that I've actually been trying to condition you to play rock this entire time. First in the thumbnail where I am playing rock. Then when I showed the image of Reagan, the supposed rock, paper, scissors champion, I showed him playing rock. And then when I was explaining the rules, I used an aggressive verb to describe what rock did to scissors, while I used much calmer verbs for the other two actions. At the same time, I used rock as the action that I was trying to influence because rock is the most common first move in rock, paper, scissors. But in case you aren't in the batch that lost against me, don't think that the rest of the video is null and void. The things that I will be talking about in this video are backed by science, and we are gonna get into that very soon. So as long as I manipulated at least 40 to 50% of you, I'm happy with it. Wow, Matt, you're so incredible. How did you know all of this? Thank you, first of all. That's really nice, and I appreciate that because honestly, recently I've kind of been
Boring.
to be completely honest with you, when I started doing research for this video, I had absolutely no idea where to look, so I just went to Google and I typed in rock, paper, scissors strategies. And honestly, a lot of really interesting and informative articles came along. These articles alone taught me a lot about how to improve my rock, paper, scissors strategies, especially since before now I would just randomly throw. But those articles weren't enough. Sure, I was a little better now, but I had so many evil, nefarious things that I wanted to do with my rock, paper, scissors skills, and I didn't feel strong enough yet. Thankfully, though, to get stronger, I didn't have to look very far, as in these very articles, I noticed a pattern. All of these articles were referencing the same scientific paper, so naturally, I went to find it, I read it, and oh my lord, it was a treasure trove. In 2014, the Experimental Social Science Laboratory of Zhejiang University in Hangzhou, China, the Public Administration College of Zhejiang Gongsheng University in Hangzhou, China, and the Institute of Theoretical Physics of Chinese Academy of Science in Beijing, China, conducted an experiment about the social cycling and conditional responses in a game of rock, paper, scissors. In this experiment, 360 students were picked from different disciplines of Zhejiang University, and they were split into 60 disjoint groups of 6. All groups were told to play 300 rock, paper, scissors rounds. Every game round, students would be paired with other students from their group, and if they were to win that round, they would be rewarded with a cash prize. So if you're doing the math here, that's 18,000 different rounds for this study, which is like a really big batch, especially compared to my about 500 rounds that I got from 3 different people, one of them being me. So yeah, maybe listen to these scientists a little more than you listen to me later on in this video. But regardless, the scientists found out something pretty cool. At different times, the strategies of the students were rich in different actions. Sometimes they were rich in rock, sometimes they were rich in paper, and sometimes they were rich in scissors, which is something you wouldn't expect if they were playing completely randomly. There were patterns, and the scientists did a great deal of number crunching to find out what these patterns were. And this is where you learn something very important, and something that might help you get better at rock, paper, scissors as a result. The most common response to winning a round is repeating the action that led let you win that round. Meaning, if you play paper and your opponent plays rock, you're likely to repeat the paper because that already let you win once. While the most common response to losing was to play whatever would have beat your opponent. So if you played rock and your opponent played paper, you are more likely to switch to scissors. I oversimplified the paper quite a lot, but that's basically the meat and potatoes and the most important parts that I feel I needed to share with you. If you want to find out more about this paper, please go and read it yourself. But anyways, now that I have taught you what the most common responses are to certain different things, I think I deserve a like from you and maybe even a subscribe. I would really appreciate that. When we get to 100 subscribers, I will be working on a decent chess bot, which is something I've always wanted to work on, and I will make it completely from scratch, just like I make pretty much all my bots. At this point in my research, I was already competent enough that I've started working on my prototype for my adaptive rock paper scissors bot, which, by the way, this video is about a rock paper scissors bot, of course. I'm sorry if you feel misled and you thought this video was just about rock, paper, scissors strategies, but I make bots on this channel and I would love if you still came along. But before we get into how the prototype worked and how I improved it later on, the prototype sucked a bit, so I decided to actually keep researching, and I found another paper that was a lot more important to my research. I just looked at the camera and I think I look a little stupid down there, so I'm gonna be sitting up here from now. Anyways, the second paper. The second paper comes from the University of California in San Diego, USA, and it is written by Eric Brockbank and Edward Wohl. This paper, instead of discussing just the game, actually discusses adaptive rock, paper, scissors bots, and it talks about how humans fail to outwit them. Now, I hope that Brockbank and Wohl do not take this with disrespect, but we're gonna be skipping over most of their paper as we already know all the basics that we need to know from the Chinese one. Part of this paper that helped me the most was the adaptive bot strategies section, which talks about 8 different strategies that their 8 separate bots used, and it puts on a chart how effective they were. When I first saw the chart, I already had a lot of ideas for how I could improve the prototype, so that's exactly what I did. So now that I have walked you through what my research process was like and you learned some things, let's talk about how I used all of this information to start working on a bot. Making an adaptive rock, paper, scissors bot is actually pretty simple. All you have to do is ask the player to give you an action, and then you just play whatever beats it. I don't know why people have been struggling to do it for so long. It's pretty goddamn easy. I'm joking, that's cheating, you can't do that. In all seriousness though, I'm about to start explaining how the bot operates, so if you want to play my bot completely fairly, you should pause the video for now, open the itch.io link in the description in a new tab, and play around 90 games before you come back. Because I'm about to start explaining how the bot works, and this is the last chance you can play it fairly before you know how the sauce is made. First, let's talk about the prototype. The prototype was actually completed before I read the second paper, which is why it's frankly kind of abhorrent. I had seen on the first paper that the scientists were tracking different actions and transitions in the students, so I had 4 different strategies that tracked transitions and actions of players. Before I start talking about the strategies, I want to explain what an action and a transition is. An action refers to rock, paper, or scissors, so the bot would track when and how you would play rock, paper, and scissors. Transitions talk about how your action changes from one round to another. If you go from rock to rock, that's a stay, which my bot tracks as a 0 transition. Going from rock to paper is tracked as a positive transition by my bot, and going from rock to scissors is tracked as a negative transition by my bot. Now that you understand what those 2 things mean, let's actually talk about the 4 strategies that my bot put into use. Let's start by understanding the first strategy, win, draw, loss results. As I said, the bot keeps a track of all actions and transitions. So what the bot can do is, if you lose, it's gonna ask itself, what's the most common action that this player picks every time that they lose? If you've lost 5 times and every time following that round you played rock, the bot will assume you always play rock after you lose. And as a result, it will play paper in anticipation. The other strategies are very simple. For example, the pattern-seeking strategies look at your previous move, for example rock, and it asks, what does this player play the most after they play rock? While the longer pattern-seeking strategy does the same thing but with your previous 2 moves. What does this player play most often after rock, for example? And of course, strategies over long periods of times change. The player won't always do the same thing, which is why the bot actually only keeps a track of the last 5 instances of whatever it is looking at. Now, all of that is great. I think I did a good job picking out strategies, but the problem comes with many other things that I did with this bot. The biggest issue, I would say, is mixing the results of the strategies. The bot was actually using all strategies every round, which means subpar strategies were consistently ruining the results of good strategies. Another thing that I did in the prototype that didn't make the cut, even though it's actually a good idea, is when a strategy would fail to predict the following move of the player 5 moves in a row, the strategy would be disabled for a temporary amount of time. Pretty cool and a good idea in my opinion, but I didn't really test how effective it was, and I couldn't be bothered to test how effective it was, so it didn't make the final cut. Now, I keep pulling the prototype quite a lot, and the reason for that is because once I was done with the prototype, first I tested it. I wrecked the bot, but I felt that was natural as I knew exactly how it worked. However, my second player, my second tester, was my mother, to whom I literally had to explain the rules of the game because she didn't remember. She wrecked the bots even worse than I did. So that's exactly why I went back to research, and that's when I ended up finding that second paper we talked about from the University of California. So now is when we meet the main character of this video, RPS, my bot, short for Adaptive Rock Paper Scissors, but ARPS didn't really sound cool. Now, RPS doesn't actually operate super differently from the prototype. The main difference is that instead of using 4 random strategies that I just came up with, it uses 7 strategies basically backed by science. And I hear you from the back of the class. You're asking, wasn't the main problem with the prototype that you were mixing strategies? And yes, you're very smart and good job on picking up on that. I, of course, addressed this issue. Even though the bot uses 7 strategies, it has a hierarchy for them, and it will always use whatever is the highest. Now you might be asking, then why don't you always just use the best strategy? And I have an answer for that too, obviously. Let's think about it. More complicated a strategy is, more data it will take until it can actually start working. For example, if we pick up the strategy of using the last 2 actions to try to predict the third one, I have to know what my opponent does after rock to be able to predict what they will do after rock. My bot waits until it has at least 4 bits of information about something like that until it tries to predict. So if after rock you always play paper, it will wait until you do that 4 times until it decides, okay, paper is the most common after rock, so if this person has played rock, I will play scissors in preparation. Which means the strongest strategies on average take about 36 moves until they actually start becoming operational. So if number 1 strategy isn't in effect, then the second one will play. If the second isn't in effect, the third one will play, and so on. If none of the 7 strategies are capable of being played, which is during the first 4 to 5 moves, then a random number generator will be used to generate a random move. Now, I have shown you this chart a few times already, and if you've counted, you will pick up on the fact that this has 8 strategies on it, while I'm saying that I'm using 7 of these strategies. So how come I omitted one of them? Well, it's pretty simple. The last 2 of the weakest strategies require the exact same amount of data until they start working. So I just omitted the last one since it would never be used anyway. Although one problem that I will point out right now that I haven't really addressed is the fact that the weakest strategies are below the dashed line. What is the dashed line? You basically want your strategy to be above the dashed line on the chart, because if it's below the dashed line, it means that humans often are capable of outwitting that strategy. Using a random number generator as a strategy has the bot hovering on the dashed line, because it's neither outwitting the human, nor is the human outwitting the bot. So even though the random number generator is at the very bottom of the strategy hierarchy that I have created for my bot, it is actually better than some of the strategies that are above it. So if we omitted these strategies, the bot would probably be better, but I haven't tested this. But yeah, that's all I wanted to tell you. That's how RPS operates. And now, to test how effective it is, instead of just, oh, backed by science, I have about 6 games to walk you through, so let's quickly get through all of those and wrap things up. After finishing the code for the bot, I ended up playing it myself. And of course, I knew how it worked. I had just finished writing the code, but even then, I played it, I tested it, and It absolutely wrecked me. It was picking up on strategies and patterns that I didn't even know I was participating in. And of course, the research papers pointed at that being the exact thing that would happen, but I didn't expect something that I made to work so well. I had a threshold for the bot that I wanted it to pass for my project to count as a success, and that was about having a 40% win rate over the course of 90 games. Needless to say, my bot passed that pass rate with me, as during my 90 rounds, it got a win rate of 46%. For context, if I used a random number generator to get the moves, that would result in about a 33% win rate, so 46 is really good. When my friends played, I first gave them a goal to outwit the bot using their cognitive skills. Then I explained the rules of rock, paper, scissors to them to avoid any confusion, and then I told them to play 90 rounds. So from now on in this video, when I say one game, I'm referring to 90 separate rounds of rock, paper, scissors. Now that the terminology is clear, let's talk about my first friend, Sheriff's experience. The first game he played against the bot, he didn't really think too much. He just played as his brain told him, and as you would expect, the bot picked up on the strategies and the patterns that even he didn't know he was doing, and the bot ended up having a win rate of 37%, which doesn't sound very impressive, especially compared to my game, but that's because I haven't revealed yet that in his first game, he had a win rate of 26%. So I consider the first game Sheriff played as the bot's victory. Unfortunately, after this though, Sheriff started dabbling in some questionable strategies that in hindsight, I'll feel like cheating to me, but I'll quickly go over these games anyway. On the second game, he decided to look up the digits of pi and try to play based on each given digit each round. I told him this was considered cheating because he was basically using a random number generator, but he said, oh, it's not random. I told him I'm not going to count this game, and as a result, we're not going to count this game. And then during his last two games, he noted down a pattern of 9 moves, where every time he'd lose, he would slightly alter the pattern. At the time, I didn't call this cheating, but in hindsight, it does seem like cheating because he was noting down these patterns. This bot is made to beat humans. I feel that Sheriff or any regular human wouldn't be able to remember this pattern for long, so in hindsight, I consider this cheating, which means out of his 4 games, only the first one qualifies as a real game. Although, if you're curious, the last 3 games all ended in draws. So even if we were to consider those 3 games, Sheriff still failed his goal to outwit the bot. After Sheriff, I moved on to Milk. And the funny thing about Milk is that I was actually supposed to talk about his games first in this segment, because Milk is supposed to be this chill dude while Sheriff is the smart guy. But Milk being so chill and nonchalant is why his games actually ended up having better results, in my opinion. Discussing his 4 games, he never really applied any strategy, especially in the same style that Sheriff was attempting to. Without any assistance from me, he managed to draw his first game. It was really interesting watching him play because even though he wasn't applying strategies, sometimes he would pick up on what actions the bot was favoring and try to use that to his advantage. But that was not enough because even his second game, he drew. But after these 2 games that he drew, I reminded him that if he wants his goal to be considered as complete, he needs to win at least 1 game. At this point, he locked in and he tried really hard, but he ended up losing his following 2 games. So, what did we learn? What we learned is that when you're dealing with a good adaptive rock, paper, scissors bot, you should try to be as random as possible, because the moment a pattern or a strategy is recognized, the bot will cook you. Anyways, I collected a lot of data from my friends while they were playing with my bot, so here are some cool charts about that. You can pause and have a look if you want. Enough talk about my friends being eviscerated by the bot though. Can you outwit the bot based on what you learned in this video? You can go in the description and see for yourself. Anyways, it was a really enjoyable experience working on this bot, especially because before this, I would have never even thought to make a rock, paper, scissors bot that was in any way strategic. None of this would be possible without the papers from the Chinese institutions as well as the California University. There are about 24 things that I didn't talk about from these papers, so if you are curious, please go give them a read. But other than that though, thank you for watching, and maybe consider giving this video a bit of engagement by liking and perhaps subscribing, because I will see you in the next video where I'll turn dinosaur nuggets into actual dinosaurs. Bye.